how do you feel about that for a discussion question?
We hit it good and hard.
Yeah, we sure did. We really took that discussion question to Pound Town. Let me...
Bone City, as it's known.
Bone _
just a little bit east of the Bone
Tolero?
This is really good content.
I hope this makes it in.
Maybe this will be the cold open. I don't know.
What? Bone City, a little bit east of Bone Mountains.
we just took it a little bit east of Vaz Taloro, if you know what I'm saying. Hello, and welcome to Maester Monthly, your favorite pseudo-monthly podcast hosted by the moderators of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Before we begin, this podcast is spoilers extended, which means that material from the Winds of Winter sample chapters and all episodes of Game of Thrones are fair game. You have been warned. I am one of your hosts, Michael, also known as Bookshelfstud.
And I am another one of your hosts, Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I am another one of your hosts, Matt, also known as JoeMagician.
Now, before we jump into some of the nicest catches and hottest topics on the subreddit from the past month or so, we are in the month of January. We are in the throes of January, deep in the throes of January, you might say. And as such, it's that time of year again for Best of Awards. The Best of 2018 awards are open as of posting this episode. Over the next few weeks, you can find the threads for nominating users for categories such as Post of the Year, Best Flair, maybe? No promises on that one. Comment of the Year, Best New Theory, a classic.
Maybe. Someone also seems to have nominated the Citadel Award once more.
Oh, what's the
I
Citadel
forgot.
Award?
I think it's Best Crow of the Year, like the person that did the most that wasn't a mod, I think, basically.
No, that was the Sir Duncan the Tall Award.
I get
that could also be a potential.
You can vote for different categories. That voting is probably over by the time this gets posted, but you can check out what categories have been nominated this year and then nominate some users for things like I think we still have the Alchemist Award gets nominated every once in a while.
The Alchemist Award is the post most likely to make yourself light on fire if true.
Exactly.
It's like the best tinfoil award, but sometimes it gets given out to people that don't think their post is tinfoil. So make sure that people are joking when you nominate them.
Oh, it's great fun. It's everyone has a laugh, and then we all go home and slap each other on the back. Yeah, so best ofs. Check the subreddit of Ice and Fire /r/ASOIAF for more information on the Best of 2018 awards. Now, we have several highlights, at least 2 or 3 good posts from the past month or so, from the tail end of 2018 and the nose end of 2019 here to talk about. But before we get to all of that, a book was published between the last time we recorded, actually, and now. That book was titled Fire and Blood, and we got a lot of information about the Targaryen dynasty in this book. So, our introduction question today, which was also posted on the subreddit a few months ago by user Kenitratu, the discussion question is, who is your favorite Targaryen? Now, this doesn't have to be limited to Fire and Blood. This can be any Targaryen, you know, like young Griff, or any Targaryen. Tyrion, that's another great Targaryen.
Jaime, Cersei.
All thinking of Jaime and Cersei. Yeah, for sure. Good call. Not the strong bastards.
Not Joffrey. Can't say Joffrey.
No, not Joffrey. How would that even... Literally not Joffrey. Matt, so why don't you tell us who your favorite Targaryen is?
My favorite Targaryen, I think most people will probably know what I'm about to say. It is, of course, Maester Aemon, or Aemon Targaryen, Aemon, older brother of Egg. I love Maester Aemon. I made a whole long video about him where I basically sang his praises as how he's a incredible dramatic character, how there's so much more to pull out of him than you really see on the page, because a lot of his backstory is told in like Dunk and Egg and in these weird flashbacks as he's dying. And I think he's a character that gives back as much as you put in, because the characters who are listening to him talk about these things are not people that understand what he's talking about. But us being the readers, we can go pull apart all these little things and construct his entire life and how he thinks he failed his family, himself, his brothers, and sort of caused almost the extinction of the Targaryens. And I don't know, it's a very lovely character and one I enjoy thinking about.
Oh, yeah, and he like, unlike so many other Targaryens, appears in the main series. We actually get to know him a little bit.
He's also one of the few Targaryens that says, like, F you, power. Doesn't want it. Gave away the kingship.
Very good point. Yeah, for sure. Aemon, let's give a hearty Aemon to Aemon Targaryen.
If only he was alive during the dance.
Oh,
if only.
He really could have run away to the wall again.
Damn! What a deep cut!
Yeah. Run away to the wall to fight the others, Michael.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, wait, they didn't come. Whoops. Tragedy.
Whoops. You
Tragedy
missed that one.
for Aemon. He
You
missed it by like a little bit, like 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. If only he'd been born several decades later. Poor Maester Aemon. Eliana, who's your favorite Targaryen?
My favorite Targaryen is Rhaenys Targaryen, not Rhaenys' wife of Aegon Conqueror, not Rhaenys the wee bab of Rhaegar Targaryen, but Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was. Daughter of also an Aemon, but different Aemon, and Jocelyn Baratheon. She's fantastic. I've loved her since the moment I first laid eyes upon her in The Greens and the Blacks when it came out years ago. Fun fact, after that novella came out, my flair for a while was the queen who never was.
Oh.
Yeah, it's awesome that we get a lot more information about her growing up, and what a spirited young woman and dragon rider she was, which her daughter turned out to be very much like as well, till her death. And I also just love the idea that she was 55 years old, but still out there being a warrior on Dragonback, and she very much, in a way, has her own no chance and no choice moment when she's up against Aegon II and Aemond. She was just great. She was amazing. Bless her. She really should have been queen.
Also
she would have actually been a good queen.
She would have been a great queen.
She would have kicked ass as a queen. It's a dang old tragedy.
Really is. She even had the Stark support. Starks don't give out support easily.
That's true. If a character in the world of Ice and Fire has the support of the Starks, they absolutely rock socks. They are the best.
It's honestly usually true. Also, I think reading Fire and Blood, you get the scene again with Rhaenys against Aegon and Aemon, like you were talking about, and it's sort of supposed to be like, oh no, Rhaenys had no shot, like you said, no choice, no chance, no choice. But then she almost kills Aegon and basically almost fatally wounds Sunfire despite going against two larger dragons.
Yeah, she does a very, very big blow to them in the war. Like, that, as you said, puts Aegon pretty much out of commission for almost the rest of the war. That means they don't have that figurehead on the battlefield as much. And had it only been her one-on-one, either against Vhagar or against Sunfire, they say that she could have actually probably taken Vhagar on her own. She, stood a chance, but alas.
Badass Rhaenys.
She is a badass. I think when people talk about badasses in Westeros, they kind of skip over her just because she happened to lose. But I don't know. That's not everything.
Dangerous woman.
Yeah.
In the words of Ariana Grande.
Yeah. Being a woman in Fire and Blood means not great things are happening for you.
Well, yes, that's a fair point. I've had to think about this for quite a while, and honestly, it's hard because there's so many Targaryens. But I kind of want to go with a controversial pick here. I know this is controversial. King Jaehaerys. No, not King Jaehaerys. The first. I mean, he's great.
Not the second?
King Jaehaerys the second. Underrated.
He is underrated.
He kind of is, actually. He did okay. I really like Balon Targaryen, who was declared heir over Rhaenys. I'm not doing that on purpose. But, he was the uncle to Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was, and was the spring prince, Balon the Brave. And in general, in Fire and Blood, we don't know a lot about him, but he sounds like a pretty good guy. He sounds like he would have been a good king. Like he would have at least not fucked up stuff as much as his son. And had he lived to be king, could have maybe pieced things together with Rhaenys a little bit, or found some sort of better solution rather than just having Viserys inherit and sort of putter around until he died and started a war. Unfortunately, Balon's appendix burst while he was riding around on a hunting trip, which is sort of an inverse Robert Baratheon, if you're keeping track of like princely royal deaths. His belly burst from the inside, not the outside.
Whose doesn't?
I mean, it happens all the time.
Appendicitis?
Yeah. Also, kings dying on hunting accidents. Stop going hunting.
I do kind of wonder if... I'm pretty sure it is just appendicitis, but maybe he was killed on a hunting trip by some character I don't give a shit about.
No, I like Balon.
Yeah, and Balon is kind of like... He's one of those characters that's like Baelor Breakspear, in that he just seems like so promising. And so, like, a better tomorrow could have been possible. I mean, he's the Spring Prince. He's Balon the Brave. Very evocative, cool names. So yeah, R.I.P. Balon Targaryen.
Yeah, R.I.P. all of these that we named. They're all dead at this point in the story.
Enough.
But yeah, Balon was chill. I liked his marriage to Alyssa Targaryen, with the exception of the part where they were brother and sister. That was so weird. I like the part where they were also, like, all children, and... he and Aemon would bother their older sister Daenerys. She's like, at first she was like, this is great. And then the part where I guess Balon was super annoyed by Alyssa. And the part that kind of weirds me out, though, like, it's great they had a loving, wonderful marriage with one another. But they're like, yeah, they got married. And next thing you know, they were like fucking all the time. And their screams could be heard all throughout the castle. I'm like, dog, your mom and dad also live there. But
Right?
It's both of your mom and dad, but I guess they're fine with that. I don't know.
It's very weird. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that angle. Like, their entire family.
Everyone in the family can hear them fucking.
Yeah. And they're like rooting them on, presumably?
They are.
I guess. I mean, like, yeah. I'll have to go back and reread that section. But yeah, Balon and Alyssa had a lusty marriage.
Got it, Balon. That really came out better in my head, but it was worth giving it a try.
It was worth
Thank
it,
you.
to be honest.
Thank you for also supporting me in questionable endeavors.
Just like Balon and Alyssa's parents. Oh.
I didn't know what to make of that passage, where it was like her yells could be heard all throughout the Red Keep. I'm like, why am I being told this? What's happening here? Is this like the most interesting thing about this person, that she fucks so loudly everyone heard?
People with the letters L, Y, S, and A in their names are just like that, I guess, in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Why is that chronicled?
So
I don't know.
That's true. That's the thing with that section of... This isn't a Fire and Blood cast, but that's the thing with the Jaehaerys chapters is, like, it takes a much closer point of view than, like, the dance, which is very much citing its sources, which means we get these kind of very intimate scenes and descriptions. Yeah. I mean, also of like, Jaehaerys and Alysanne when they're kids on Dragonstone hold up in their, like, preteen marriage cave.
I just don't know why that was cited is, like, given an objective source, yet we don't know what happened with Chris and Cole. I'm just saying.
Hey,
that's a good point.
And Aegon the Conqueror is basically a blank face throughout this entire book, but like, oh yeah, she liked yelling when she had sex. Okay. You couldn't have guessed anything like that about Aegon? Like, nothing? Okay, cool.
Aegon hooted and hollered like
Was he quiet? What sort of sounds did Aegon the Conqueror make in bed? That's the real tea.
We don't know.
That's a discussion question. Damn it. Okay, next time George R. R. Martin is doing a signing or something.
Wah! Wah!
Oh my god.
What are those Wario noises?
Wah! Wah! That's the sound of Aegon the Conqueror coming.
Piper!
That is the cold open for the episode now. Is like Matt doing that and then explaining what it is. Oh my god!
I forget what that noise is. It's from something.
Yeah, is that a reference?
It is, but I forget to what.
Coming from deep in your psyche.
Something's coming from deep.
Amazing. All right, we have a lot of highlights and excellent posts from the past month or so, maybe a little more than a month to bring you all, but one that stands out is from fairly recently. This was posted right at the end of December, right on the tail end of Christmas itself. And the title of the post is Gurm in Guadalajara, open parentheses, question about Euron, close parentheses, posted by Emilior94. And in this video, George R. R. Martin essentially confirms that Euron Greyjoy has been to Valyria. George includes Euron in a list of people who have been to Valyria and just sort of presents it very matter-of-factly. As the OP puts it, he telling us Euron has been there like it is something confirmed. Now, this has been something that's been debated a lot in the fandom, about Euron maybe lying about having been to Valyria, about where he got his horn. He got that from the Warlocks, where he got his Valyrian steel armor, all these kinds of things. So this was people are taking it as a confirmation, an official Gurm word of God confirmation on Euron visiting Valyria himself. Did you guys think that he literally visited Valyria before this?
After the chapters in Feast, I'd actually doubted that he had been to Valyria based on his reactions to Roger Carla, but having been there, maybe I was just so affected by the dark room and Gurm's sultry tones, because I'm going to brag about having been there for the reading of the Forsaken whenever I fucking can. Because I fucking can, can you, Michael. And
exactly.
I took it at face value that when Euron steps out in that Valyrian steel armor, that is proof that he had been there.
That was how I heard it as well, because I also heard it with my own 2 ears, because I was there in the room at Balticon when he read that chapter. No, but that was definitely how it played out in that excerpt from The Winds of Winter. It's like, there's some doubt, who knows if he's been there, and then Euron steps out and he's wearing the armor, and it's like, oh my god, he was right the whole time. I still harbored some suspicions. So it's interesting that George is presenting it matter-of-factly. I still harbor some suspicions, to be honest. But Matt, what did you think?
I was leaning towards Euron being a big fat liar, because he seems to be quite a lot of the time. This was a discussion that me and poor Quentin have had a couple of times where we go back and forth on, is Euron just a great hype man, or does he actually have the magic and the items to back it up? But like you guys said, when he stepped out with that Valyrian steel armor, or chainmail, I think it was. I mean, that's kind of like nails in the coffin, so to speak. He would have had to steal that from, I don't even know who would even put that thing on a boat. That thing is worth more than a kingdom. So if he's got it, he had to have gotten it probably by salvaging. I was mostly surprised with this confirmation that there's enough of Valyria left that you can just sort of walk around and find a dragon horn and chainmail. From what we've heard about it, the stories that George has created so far, he calls it the smoking sea, that there's basically nothing left, that it's just like a bubbling cauldron. But with this and Eyrie Targaryen, and the speculation in Fire and Blood that Balerion took her there, apparently there's maybe much closer to what the show depicts, a island gone wild without people anymore.
Sure. Also, I want to throw out a quick factoid that the horn, the Dragonbinder horn, was... Euron specifically took that from Pyat Pri and the Warlocks off of their ship. He didn't get that from Valyria. We don't know where the Warlocks got it, and it's obviously Valyrian, because it's, a gigantic fucking dragon horn with Valyrian glyphs all over it. What else do you think it could be? But that's why there was some doubt, I think, right, in people's minds, was the horn, got it from the Warlocks or whatever. He lied about where he got the horn. He said he found the horn in the ruins of Valyria. So that was part of the reason there was suspicion.
Yeah.
Along with that, until this had come out, people had been questioning again whether or not Euron had visited Valyria because of that Arya, and by Arya I mean Aerea, chapter in Fire and Blood where she comes out with a bunch of parasites. And I mean, I personally just took it as like, I don't know, sometimes you visit places and you get parasites and sometimes you don't. Take your fucking preventative medicine and get your vaccines, everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, vaccines don't prevent parasites, but,
Don't prevent fireworms.
like take your medicine,
will.
take your malarials.
Exactly. Yeah. If she'd popped a few, so maybe Euron had just, he had good resistance.
Boil your water, or conversely, freeze your water if that's what it takes if you're going to Valyria.
Or maybe Targaryens and Valyrians are more susceptible to those weird magic infestations or something. There could be any number of reasons, like why one person gets it and one person doesn't.
I did pose this question, and I haven't gotten a good answer. Is Euron just a big fireworm?
Oh.
Is it like situation from Men in Black where that guy's just wearing human skin?
I was just talking about that guy earlier today.
Yeah. Is he Edgar?
All right. Well, as a certified fireworm inspector, I have a few basic questions to ask you before
Sure.
So number one, when you run your hand over his forehead, is he slimy at all?
Euron's fictional. I can't run my hand over his forehead.
Ah, okay. Well, I see you're not taking this as seriously as I am. I'm a certified fireworm inspector, sir. And
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, he feels very hot to the touch. He's even smoking out of his orifices sometimes. It's weird.
That's a biggie. I hate it when the orifices smoke. Tell you what, here's what you got to do. Just kill him. There's nothing else for
But
you.
how do you kill a fireworm? How do you kill it?
Nope, there's only one question in the evaluation, and the only answer is to kill
By the
him.
way, where did they get ice?
In fact, I was going to say that either way. I'm actually a faceless man. I was lying about myself.
What we need is a talking pug.
Explain
That's
that
in
one?
Men in Black.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm not yet sure of its
Oh, wow.
value,
Yeah.
but I know it's important. Also, hold on. I'm coming back to the Arya thing quickly. Because
Please
there's
do.
a comment in this thread that says, Arya, a small girl all by herself with a belligerent dragon, survived presumably at Valyria for 2 years. So actually nothing about her fate. This credits Euron's word, and this is from user Danivus, Danivus, in that same thread.
That's a great point. Yeah. She probably hung out there for more than like a couple hours. So yeah, there might be some islands or something.
And Euron's a captain. He has a crew. Says, go out and bring me back cool stuff. To bring him back some Valyrian steel chainmail.
Yeah.
Neat. He didn't
It's
have
true.
to actually
Send
do
out
too much.
More cockroaches.
Yes, more bugs.
Oh, yeah, right. Edgar on the bug man.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why his crew doesn't talk, is they're also
I mean,
fireworms.
Edgar struggled to talk. He was
They're
all
all
like,
bugs.
"Ugh."
It was hard for him.
That's
Oh,
right.
and Shade of the Evening is his sugar.
Oh, fuck. I think we've got ourselves a good one.
I really want the Will Smith cameo that's promised in the upcoming season.
I mean, the end credits for Game of Thrones will be a Will Smith rap over the...
I deserve this.
With
I
Tommy Lee
deserve
Jones.
this. I have been very good. I deserve this.
That's right. We all need it, Will Smith. Will Smith, if you're listening to this, and I pray that you are, please do a end credits rap for Game of Thrones.
Is the Night's Watch still back?
Oh my god, but they actually could have.
Here come the men in black.
Westeros
Wow.
defenders, here to take the night back.
Wow. This is really getting into it.
Like those guns they shoot, those are basically Lightbringer.
Of course, yeah. And they make people forget.
They do. They do.
I don't have anything for that one.
They forget like Westeros. Got it.
Oh yeah, they disavow their titles and all that.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep it going. Keep flogging the bit.
You just become John, Agent J, Jon
Yeah.
Snow.
Agent J Snow. That's really good. Yeah.
Wow, this is a Men in
And
Black cast
I'm
now.
excited. We should
Yeah,
put out a
welcome.
cast for when the new Men in Black movie comes out.
Oh, there is one
Yeah.
coming out. That's right.
That's right. With Valkyrie and
Exactly.
Thor. That's right.
And that makes perfect sense because
mean
Bloodraven
Robert Baratheon?
also was part of the Men in Black, and he is Odin, father of Thor.
Oh.
It all comes around full circle.
Wow.
We really went off the rails here.
There's so many Venn diagrams overlapping. God damn, this was just like a quick little So Spake Martin. And that was how it went.
Just to go back around, I guess the actual post, I do think it's really cool that Euron has actually been to Valyria, and that it might have some kind of relevance coming up, because we know Dany's probably going to be going right past it on her way back to Westeros. Yeah. Maybe she stops off there. People say Volantis. Maybe a little bit of both. She's on Balerion. Maybe she goes to see it while she goes by. That'd be pretty cool.
True.
I'm honestly really excited that it's not totally destroyed. That it's not like full Atlantis sunk to the bottom of the sea.
There's something there to see.
I mean, I think of it as like Pompeii. In Pompeii, granted, not everything survived, obviously, but there are skeletons, I guess. But granted, that was a very fast volcanic eruption and not hundreds of years of volcanic activity. Whatever. Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, I mean, there's that guy, that ash-covered body at Pompeii of the guy who's, like, laying back and, like, tossing one off before the volcano hits him. Have you ever seen that? No, it's not real, actually. It's an
I know the one of
fake.
Yeah. It's not real. There's a couple that are
two lovers, yeah.
There's also a guard that's, like, a Roman guard that's pointing somewhere.
There's also all the graffiti. I mean, the graffiti is really the best part of Pompeii.
I want Valyrian graffiti, like Targaryen smell or something like that.
Really filthy Valyrian graffiti. Something about Alyssa screaming.
I want the Valyrian slave graffiti where it's like sees
there
the
we go.
means of
Would
production.
they be able to read or write?
Well, most of them were stolen, so probably some.
Even now, though, people who would be stolen, like the everyday common person, is likely illiterate. I'm just saying.
If the people of Marine can figure out common enough for the show, then the Valyrian slaves can do it too.
I guess. And it's not hard to draw a dick, you know?
Yeah, like a dick in a dragon's mouth. You got it.
Or a dragon. Where am I going? All right.
So for our next highlight, we have a post by user Quackadeus, an excellent name.
Oh, rock me, Quackadeus.
Very good. A take on Amadeus.
Quackadeus, 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 Quackadeus,
Quackadeus. And the post is titled, Guilty Feet Have Got No Rhythm, a critique of Martin's writing of the Dance of the Dragons. So the main point of this post is that while you're supposed to see bad sides on both the greens and the black in the Dance of the Dragons, Quackadeus makes the argument that the greens are so comically evil that it's hard to actually make that a fruitful, logical endeavor. That, except for Daemon, the blacks are basically just awesome. They have, like, heroic deeds. They're mostly pretty nice. They have a lot of precedent and good people on their side, whereas the greens are basically the Lannisters. So, I think that's an interesting point that they're making, that it's too easy to see which guys are the bad guys, although that basically happens in the War of the Five Kings, so it's not like it's out of Martin's wheelhouse, I guess.
It's an interesting post, because I think there are a lot of unlikable people on both sides, but I get what they're saying about how the greens are generally, like, more evil than the blacks. I don't know how much I agree with the idea that this is weak writing. That's how the post opens.
Yeah.
Quackadeus says, in fact, I'll go so far as to argue that the Dance of the Dragons is one of Martin's weakest elements in the entire ASOIAF series, but because his own message is undermined by how he's written them, these two sides. It's the same with the Blackwoods and the Brackens, they say. He wants us to think it's a tragedy that neither side can put down their weapons, but he ends up writing one as way better than the other. I don't know. Do you guys agree with that?
I'm going to agree, but for a different reason. I agree that the Dance of the Dragons is indeed some of Martin's weakest elements and weakest writing in A Song of Ice and Fire, but I don't think it's because it's written with both sides being portrayed as unequal in their goodness and / or badness. I think that it's weak in that, yes, I agree that neither side is likable, but I think that has to do with the way that Martin wrote it. I think that the idea of having unreliable sources and how he's inspired by historians having to piece together what happened in the past through different kinds of sources, primary, secondary, different sources is an interesting idea. And I think that it's Martin's way of playing around with that unreliable narrator when he doesn't have that POV structure. But I think that in doing so, and in failing to give us an anchor, he fails to give us any sort of emotional anchor in the Dance of the Dragons, and we end up not having the perspective of any of these characters in order to have empathy for them or relate to them in any way. And ultimately, part of what makes A Song of Ice and Fire so compelling is that it's, again, about that human heart in conflict with itself, and because we're so far removed from these characters, and we're just like, I don't really know who they are constantly. You can't get a grasp on them. They keep shifting. I think that's part of what makes them so unlikable and makes it weak. We don't have that same emotional tether. And in fact, we actually have that in other elements of Fire and Blood. We have that in the Jaehaerys and the Alicent content. Like, that's just an unhappy family, to go back to Tolstoy, right? I think it's Tolstoy and Anna Karenina. All happy families are the same. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And we explore that through Jaehaerys and Alicent and their kids screaming. And we get an idea of who everyone is and what their family drama is, like, intimately as something relatable. Like, who can't relate to, like, rebellious teenagers? But that's not what we have in the dance. They're so, like, out of larger than life and ridiculous.
Yeah, I do wonder. I mean, his big project with the dance and the way it's written is the interrogation of, like, historical sources, right? Is like, this source says this one says that. How are we supposed to know? But I think
Great Germ.
If he wanted to do that and have us buy into the human element more, maybe having some clearer agendas from the sources, or even having sort of a presentation of it as Aegon II and all of them are written by the historical accounts as very heroic, but then we have like a rebel history or like a secret history, an unorthodox history or something that presents like a counter narrative, as opposed to just conflicting narratives that don't. I know they do have agendas, I just don't think they're strong enough to actually matter to the reader. Septon Eustace is in Sport of the Greens, if I remember right. But
Mushrooms, the Blacks, and then Munkins in between.
Yeah, but I think the end result of that was like, it didn't do enough for me. I think, though, that I wanted to shout out to Feldman in the comments as well, because he does point out that Larry Strong is a really interesting character on the side of the Greens, who seems to be like a really competent dude trying to do his job well, even though he's doing it for Aegon II Targaryen, who just sucks butt. So, I can see that as well. This idea that there are some strong characters, interesting characters there.
I would agree with much of what you both are saying. I think this post is really just sort of showing that when you zoom out on Martin's grand work, it's like not as interesting as you might think, because the Starks are the obvious good guys, the Lannisters are the very obvious bad guys. If you zoom out this far of the Dance with the Dragons, it's not really as interesting, because they're supposed to be sort of parallel stories. But when you zoom in, when you see the characters, when you actually get to know them, it's much, 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 much more interesting, even if the grand design and plan behind it is not particularly like original or fascinating on its own. That's kind of what we got with the dance. Like, if you did a bullet point of the first 3 books of A Song of Ice and Fire without seeing any of the characters and what they think about it.
For sure, yeah. This discussion has reminded me of Blackwater specifically, because that's the case in the series where you have 2 sides fighting, where you're like, oh man, I don't know who I want to win, because I like Tyrion, I've been in his head and he's funny and clever, but Stannis is technically correct about the inheritance stuff. And it works pretty well in Blackwater, because you have Sansa and you have Davos and you have Tyrion all telling these really interesting stories about the conflict. Whereas if you just told that in bullet point format, I don't know if it would work that well.
Okay, I'm going to throw out 2 things. First, I want to point to the comment also in this discussion by Eliza Binthy, who says that, yes, OP is correct about the way it's written, but they say that the presumption of the argument here is that Martin intended to write both sides as equally sympathetic, but this is not the case at all, in my opinion. And as Elizabeth Binthy goes on to say that, sure, the Blacks won, and of course history will favor them, but the fact of the matter is, Germ is writing this story in today's world, not in the fantasy world of Westeros, and thus with that modern perspective of, yes, the Blacks had a better cause, especially from our perspective as modern readers, and being a little more inclined towards that gender equality. And that doesn't mean, like, there was a more right party in the way that everything was handled, and they draw a comparison to the slavers in the main story of how people complain that they are evil, unsympathetic characters. And Elizabeth D says it's not entirely true. You see a little bit from their side, but the ultimate conclusion that George is directing us to, as they say, and just the same with the Greens, is that in actual reality, they are wrong. And so I like that comment, but regarding the structure of how it could have been portrayed, I don't know how well this would have worked, especially in the way that Fire and Blood as a whole is written. But I think that we are presented a lot of these conflicting sources, and especially the parts that we care about, chronologically, like we're given these different sources within the span of like 2 paragraphs, but throwing it out there, crazy idea. What if we got it like the Akira Kurosawa movie, Rashomon?
Ah, okay, sure, I'm with you. So we get like Septon Eustace's account, and then Mushroom's account, like that kind of, but maybe not them, something like that.
Yeah, maybe it's not necessarily those POVs because, of course, they're the ones recalling it or writing it down and giving their account. But I mean, that is how Rashomon is in a way too. It's the accounts we told later, these remembered accounts, right, from different perspectives. So it's not entirely a poor comparison. And of course, Rashomon was a very much, I don't know that I would say it was successful during the time. I don't know what happened during the time. It says here it won several awards, so perhaps it was successful when it came out, but it's...
Well, hugely
it's been so influential,
right?
And I'm sure that George is even drawing on it right now when he writes A Song of Ice and Fire and his own idea of the lack of an objective truth in the way that he's putting A Song of Ice and Fire together. And of course, like, it is almost 70 years later, and we are talking about Rashomon right now.
Bingo. Good call. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I like that.
I would also argue that if Martin wanted to put a narrative in this, I think he has an obvious character in someone like Nettles, who grew up during it, started as a minor character, became a large one, much in the same way he does with Dunk. It's an archetype he already likes. It's a story that's good to tell. Like, imagine somebody in, she's from Hull, I think.
Yeah.
From Driftmark. Someone in Hull would have a fascinating perspective on the start of the Dance of the Dragons, especially as she sees these Targaryens everywhere, and they're interacting, and you could see them at port, or she could... All those other interesting things. The Dance of the Dragons is written as this kind of like a game of trying to figure out which POV you're going to believe, whereas there's a much more interesting way to write it, although I understand that's not what he was trying to do. But it's a tool in his bag that I think would have made this a much better story, especially because Nettles interacts with so many huge characters over the course of the dance.
Yeah, and you could see also, you know, from the Greens, you could have, again, like Larry Strong is one of the few kind of sympathetic characters and has interesting stuff to do. I think really what we're coming down to here is that we need a whole separate series, point of view wise. Right? I mean, maybe not as huge as ASOIAF, but like maybe just a fantasy trilogy, just a trilogy,
something like that. Honestly, that's part of the reason that I would love a television adaptation of the dance, because it gives us the opportunity to actually do that character work.
Yes, for sure. It's so clearly what he has in mind. Like, you reading the dance material, you feel like George R. Martin is telling you about this really cool story that he's going to write.
Yeah.
Which he theoretically is going to,
That's what
with
he's doing,
Daenerys and young Griff. He did say that we are going to have a second Dance of the Dragons.
Yep. The first one will come up time to time. The second will be the subject of a future book. Those are his words, the words of George.
That's true. I think the best way to sum this up is, what's a better way to experience the War of the Roses? In a history book or from like a television series focusing on individual characters?
Oh, that's what you were going to say. I thought you would say being there when it happened. I was like, I don't want to be there.
No.
They didn't have the internet.
No, but there's a reason every high school kid's eyes glaze over when you start talking about the War of the Roses, and that's kind of what he did here.
I didn't even learn about the Wars of the Roses when I was in high school.
Yeah, you were a bad student.
What we need is a Knight's Tale.
Yeah, A Knight's Tale. That's a much
What
better
we
way.
need is to resurrect Heath Ledger.
He would be a great Kristen Cole.
No, he'd be a great Dunk.
I don't know. He's not thick enough to be Dunk for me.
If movies can convince you Steven Seagal is tall, then Heath Ledger could be tall too.
Who would be a good Dunk? The guy who plays Thor, maybe, but he's a little short too. The Chemsworth.
You just do hero shots. Just point it up.
Yeah. The entire Dunk and Egg movie is just from a low angle. Except for Egg, which is all from a high angle.
All right, everyone. So next, I have a post which maybe I threw in here just solely because I love the title, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Who knows? And the title of the post is Professor Layton in the Case of the Missing Hightower by a username that Michael loves called Eduardo Steduardo.
I don't know why that gets me. But,
and I'm just going to read you all the TLDR of this post. The TLDR is that Lord Layton Hightower, a secret dragon lord, is conspiring to help Dany conquer Westeros with an army of fish people.
Nice.
Wow.
Damn.
Sticking the landing.
That's talk about sticking the landing.
Why is that not the first sentence? That just grabs you.
Why are all books not just filled with that sentence, actually? That's all we need. Yeah. That's a mic drop right there. For those of you who didn't deduce the entire post just from that sentence, what is wrong with you? Get on our level, you know? It's about Layton Hightower, Lord Layton, who we get a little biography by Eduardo Steduardo of Layton Hightower. And he became really reclusive about 10 years ago. He's lurking up in the Hightower with the mad maid Melora, his daughter, and jokingly, a captain of the ship the Huntress says to Sam in Samwell 5, Feast for Crows, that he believes Layton could be trying to raise an army from the deeps. That's so funny, but it's not, because...
Are you sure? Are you sure it's not fun?
As Eduardo Steduardo points out, there's a lot of connection with the high tower and the deep ones, and the black oily stone at the base of the tower, and that Lord Layton could be up there just really tapping into this, and he's gonna ride a seahorse and fight Euron.
I'm gonna read a quote from within this. All right,
Please do.
Eduardo Steduardo says, "Mayhaps Lord Hightower has been venturing into the tunnels of the Foundation for the past decade and has found a way to communicate with the Deep Ones, meaning that when Euron and his awesome blood magic Kraken descend on Old Town Layton will rush out of the ocean riding a seahorse with an army of Deep Ones behind him that will lead to the coolest eldritch sea creature battle between weird magical kooks that has been ever put to the page. Completely awesome? Yes. Likely to happen at all? No. You're not doing yourself any favors here, Eduardo Steduardo, but hold on. So what else could Layton be doing, and who else could the Hightowers have ancient ties with that are the source of even more awesome tinfoil? How about the Great Empire of the Dawn? I'm almost done reading a lot of quotes, but Old Town is called Old Town because it's old. Like, really, really old. Predating the First Men's arrival in Westeros and the Long Night, making it over 10,000 years old. Wow, but what if they said over 9,000 years? Never mind.
Oh,
that would have been
I know!
Over the edge.
Oh, okay. That's it.
Damn.
That's all I wanted to read aloud to you.
Before we go any further, I just want to say, I love that Eliana interpreted this as somebody shouting like somebody on the street corner.
My name is Eduardo Steduardo, and I think Layton Hightower is going to ride fish. And people are throwing things at him, and
he's got a sign. He's walking around. Deep Ones are coming.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just throw this out there because we're talking about Fire and Blood and the Dance of the Dragons. But remember when? Who was it? Someone on the side of Rainier on the Blacks kept talking about how watch out about the small folk rising up against the dragons because even rats can take out a bear. And yes, fish are small and a kraken is big, but mayhaps many little fish can take out a kraken. I have watched Finding Nemo, and they got out of the net.
That's a great point.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure George R. R. Martin has seen Finding Nemo, although I would like to confirm that. So this could be synergy here. This could be a connection. It is true that the Hightower is the nexus of a lot of like weird old stuff. As Eduardo so eloquently put it, it is really, really old. Like old.
Really old.
Like,
I like the part where they just say that, is this possible? No.
No. I mean, points for honesty.
These are the best kind of posts, I think, because it's like, yeah, there's all this crazy shit. Probably not gonna mean anything, but what if it does?
Well, then they pivot to the Great Empire of the Dawn.
Yes, that's true. They do. They very much do.
Was this written by poor Quentin secretly? Did we discover his alt?
He thinks Leighton's probably going to blow up or something with the Hightower.
I don't know. There's a lot of Eldritch stuff going on in this, and this is really his bag. Crazy stuff happening at Old
I will
Town.
say that recently, History of Westeros said that their most viewed video and potentially most listened to podcasts, if they grab those numbers, is their video that they did together with Lucifer Means Lightbringer on the Great Empire of the Dawn. So people see it to be of importance, and maybe the importance is this.
There we go. Yeah.
Fish people. That's the importance.
People.
Fish people.
Yes.
Guys, I haven't seen The Shape of Water yet.
Oh,
Oof.
me neither.
Me neither.
But that's
Wow.
actually a documentary about Leighton Hightower.
Melora the Mad Maid is actually a mermaid.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's why she's a maid.
Oh my god, you're right. Yeah, she's a mermaid. Wow.
Oh.
Michael, I want to challenge you to something right now.
Okay.
Which part of this post aren't crazy? Which parts
Are
like
aren't crazy?
Yeah.
Um,
what are like
hold
the,
on,
the
I've got
parts
it.
where you're like, actually, this makes a good point?
I've got it. He is known to have competed in tourneys in his younger years. That sentence about Leighton Hightower, that is a fact, and you cannot dispute this.
Wow.
No, so I don't see Leighton actually being successful with the magic stuff, but I do think Sam is going to meet Leighton Hightower in the Hightower, maybe, and that Leighton will be convinced he's like doing something spooky. I don't think it'll work. I think Leighton will be wrong because he's not going to be doing the blood magic that Euron is going to do. But I think Leighton, you know who wrote this post?
Leighton
Hightower wrote
Leighton
this post.
Hightower wrote
He
this
believes
post.
this about himself.
And that would explain why he doesn't have any prophecies then by Patchface, because Patchface has
Oh,
words that I
yes.
think would really back him up.
That's a great point. Yeah, I know he even mentioned the seahorse riding out of the sea, I believe.
And the bubbles going up or something. No, snowing down, snowing up. Yeah.
My bubbles.
All right, good Finding Nemo reference. I want to leave on this other sentence from the post. Really, we're just reading this one aloud because we liked it, Eduardo. Well, I think I may have enough evidence to make some stretches and reach some crazy conclusions, so pull your tinfoil down to your ankles because here is where we go off the rails.
I don't have that much tinfoil.
Where does he think my tinfoil starts?
Do you think
That's my
I just have like just a thing staying on my head and I'm just gonna pull it down like a curtain of tinfoil?
Exactly, yeah. Or like jump so high that my hat comes down. Yeah, it's no. This is a lovely post, even if I don't necessarily agree with its conclusions. But there's something going on at the Hightower. Thank you, Eduardo.
There is something.
There really
going on
is
there.
actually something
Yeah.
going on at the Hightower. I'm excited to see
Yeah.
what it is. This post makes me smile.
It's really not that crazy in like if you've just read a lot of H.P. Lovecraft recently.
Sure.
Like if A Song of Ice and Fire was being written by Lovecraft, Stedwardo would be 100% correct that this is probably where it's going.
By the way, it was Manfred Mann's Earth.
Oh, thank
Band,
you.
but it was originally Bruce Springsteen.
Blinded by the
Oh,
Light.
Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen. Sorry,
Okay.
I confused him with Clapton. My bad.
That's okay. Our next post comes to us courtesy of someone, I believe we've had their posts on the cast before because I remember this name. It's Jim Gubber. Or
Jim Jibber.
Jim
Jim
Gibbery.
Gibbery,
Jim
Jim
Gibbery. Jim Gibbery.
Jim Chipperu.
Are we Mary Poppins
Thank you for
right
joining.
now?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
The title of this post is The White Walkers Are Not Grey. Tolkien, Beowulf, and the Monsters of ASOIAF. We're diving straight from that really goofy Professor Layton post into this really kind of academic post, which is referencing an essay that was written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien, of course, the author of The Lord of the Rings, a very good series of movies. But
books.
Before he was, and video games.
Video games are better than all the rest of them.
That's right. Before he was the producer of these movies, he was a scholar of Old English and Old Icelandic in particular, and of Beowulf, and wrote this great essay about Beowulf called Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics. And before Tolkien, actually, people considered Beowulf to basically be a garbage fairy tale. He really got different sort of scholarly attitudes toward it for the first time in a little while, or at least mainstreamed it in academia. But that's beside the point. There's an argument about the fact that the monsters in Beowulf are the representatives of sort of the inevitable march of death, that the monsters can be delayed. Beowulf can put off Grendel and Grendel's mother, but in the end, the dragon comes for him, and he defeats the dragon but dies. You know, that there is no winning in the end over death, but that it is necessary to fight nonetheless. There's a quote way down here in the essay: "Only they are on the right side, though it is not the side that wins." And they, in this case, being humans, the gods, the good gods. Absolute resistance, perfect because it is without hope. And that's kind of something that ASOIAF is pulling towards. And that's what the original post is arguing, is that this is a tradition. The others are in the tradition of the Beowulf monsters, these things that really can't be defeated in the end. You can't defeat death, but that you have to. You have no chance and no choice, as Brienne said. So there's a lot of discussion in this thread about the others and their nature and all that. So I don't know. Where did you guys kind of land after skimming through this post?
It really makes me think about the game Ski Free and how you try and go past the Yeti, but eventually it's gonna get you. Even when you get past it, every time he's gonna come back, and one of those times, death comes for you, as it does for us all.
I'm speechless. That's amazing.
With the snow, even, and the ice monsters, it's actually a perfect analogy.
Right, and yet you have no choice but to continue playing Ski Free on your parents' Windows 95.
That's not true. You can stay at the top. You can just go sideways and never get caught.
Fuck, now I'm gonna go download Ski Free again for like 15 minutes.
Speaking of someone that went sideways at the top and never got caught, the others, where they essentially just sort of skipped death and said like through Deuces to death itself, and just sort of kept being themselves for thousands of years.
Through Deuces to death is maybe that's going on a shirt, I think. Yeah. Wow. It's not the pursuit for immortality, it's throwing deuces to death.
Yeah, we all are working under the same understanding of what the term deuces here means, right?
What do you think it means?
I was assuming it was a pair of middle fingers.
But you can throw poop at death, I guess.
It could also be like the BoJack Horseman, the thumb between the middle and index fingers, which represents a tiny dick.
Or the English middle fingers, where it's two fingers.
What about the song that's originally by Eric Clapton, but I forgot who redoes it, and they're like, blinded by the light, ripped up like a deuce.
A deuce coupe.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What is deuce?
It's a reference to a car.
The Beach Boys?
No, it's not the Beach Boys who did it, and I don't remember who did it, but it's Dexy's Midnight Runners. Dexy's Midnight Runners. No,
that's Come On Eileen.
Oh fuck, you're right.
I do like Come On Eileen.
Who doesn't?
Come on, Eileen.
Come on, Eileen. We're talking about the White Walkers here. So there's some discussion in the thread then about OP makes a point that the others are very like inevitable, a force of nature, and some people took that to mean that they are mindless. Maybe react to that strongly.
The others can be unrelenting, total evil, and be intelligent, which we know they are. I mean, just from the prologue itself, they laugh, they wear armor, they use tools. Everything's there for you to understand that they are intelligent beings, but much like in Lord of the Rings, where Sauron is basically pure evil himself, he's still very intelligent and he has plans. So that's not really the point OP was making, but I understand why people took it that way, because at some points he did kind of break down Grundle into kind of a personification of death with just like single-mindedness.
The way I see it is like OP and some of the responses regarding like talking about the text and how the others act. To me, it's talking past one another.
Yeah.
Because, in my opinion, Jim Jibber is coming at it from something like a more literary analysis, right? A more, I think I'm using this term right, but I could be using it wrong, dualist perspective of what the others represent, you know, how you could interpret the story of what it means for the human condition. But the other responses within the text are from a more Watsonian. I think I'm using these terms wrong, but I'm going to keep doing it. From like in story.
Watsonian means
in-universe of like, are the characters good or bad in their own intentions, right? And or how if they're human or not, if they have intentionality. And I think that the 2 points are talking past one. They're just like talking about different things.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, OP's point is really more to the idea that the others are not just like some misunderstood guys from over the hill who happen to be different from us. That's the wildlings, like that exists in ASOIAF, but that the others are really part of this tradition that starts in really ancient myth and all that, but, you know, goes through contemporary literature of a force that is kind of outside morality, that is like, it's coming for you one way or another. It's gonna get you, and you gotta look out.
Yeah.
So I see Matt like scoffing and rolling his eyes at me, and I can't tell if that's a default reaction to me.
I think it's because of Gitch.
No.
You said Gitch.
You gonna Gitch?
Yeah. So what I'm rolling my eyes at is the idea presented here and the quotes that he's pulling from Tolkien that the only way that the others are interesting and that the way that they're going to be used is that they have to symbolize this abstract death and legacy, which is basically what Beowulf is about. It's about legend of a man standing against the darkness kind of thing, and how his name went on forever even though he died. And I would say that's very much what Tolkien wrote. That is not what George has written. He has gone to great lengths to show us the human side of dark characters, particularly someone like Tyrion or Euron, even in his myths with the Bloodstone Emperor or the characters like the Grey King or the Night's King, all these different people who are evil, but evil and started out in human, and so we can understand where they're coming from. And the way that Jim Jibber, I think, is describing the way Martin is writing this is, I think it's completely off base with the evidence we have from what Martin is trying to tell us about his villains.
I mean, I feel like the thing that is missing from this is the quote from the Quentin chapter, men's lives have meaning, not their deaths, that it is different from Beowulf. Yeah, because it's not just about each man and all men and all their works shall die, as Jim Jibber
And it's
quotes.
written in an English that we can understand.
That's also a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the Seamus Heaney version is a little dry. But that ASOIAF is about something different from that, using elements from this tradition. So the part that I disagree with in the post is at the end where Jim Jibber says, it may also be that the War of the Dawn ends on a cliffhanger, that it's not the outcome that matters since victory only means delaying ultimate defeat. I don't agree with that necessarily. I think that there can be victory over the others, just not victory over death. And like that grappling with the sort of plot realities of like, we've got to defeat the others. Oh boy. I don't know why I did a 1920s newscaster voice for that, but we've got to defeat the others. That is part of a bigger thing, and that I don't know. The Beowulf thing seems relevant, but I don't think we can use this essay to predict ASOIAF. I think we can use it to compare analyses.
Yeah, I don't know that ASOIAF is going to end on that kind of cliffhanger, I don't think it will. The idea of victory over death, I agree. I don't think that's something that George R. R. Martin is arguing, especially because he's so gung-ho about how his perspective as a lapsed Catholic / atheist inspires his story. And I'm also coming to this at the table with the idea of victory over death is very much, I think, language that you hear in Christianity when people talk about Jesus being that victory over death. And I think that George doesn't feel that way about his story. But I do think that he is very much saying that the others, yes, of course, people like Euron and the others are understandable. And while George says that, sure, there are no true black or white people in terms of morality, sure, there are shades of gray, some more gray than others, I do think that there is an argument to be made that there are people who, while understandable, are in fact evil. And I think that it's fine to say that's the case because, like, I was listening earlier today to the Nauticast episode with Stephen Atwell, and they were talking about tragedy and that idea of what makes tragedy structurally tragic is that it isn't inevitable. And that's the thing about evilness, right? You can choose good. It might not be the easy choice, right? But it's a choice that one can make, as we see with characters like Ned Stark. It's the harder choice. It has bad consequences, but it is theoretically the categorically right choice, depending on like which school of philosophy. But there is good, and there is choosing bad.
For sure.
I'd agree with that, and I think that's something that's not really present in Beowulf or really Lord of the Rings, where Grendel and his mother don't have really any choice but to be the monsters that they are. And within the Lord of the Rings universe, Eru Ilúvatar created everything, so therefore Morgoth has no choice in who he is either. It's all like a weird predestined world.
Well, there are some Tolkien scholars, including myself, who would debate you on the free will thing about Eru and Morgoth, that they all have their voices, but they're all still part of Eru's song. But like, I get what you're saying. We know that there's kind of an absolute creator or like governor of existence in Lord of the Rings, and in ASOIAF, it's an agnostic version of that. You know, there's no way to know what divine purposes are out there.
Yeah, all of his most evil characters, like Elion was saying, eventually choose to continue down that path. There's really, in what Jim Jibber is citing, there's no other path really for these other characters. Although I understand what you're saying about Lord of the Rings, it really, much in the way that Tolkien is a turbo Christian, he does believe in the one true creator of all things who knows all and blah, blah, blah.
And I will say this, that it comes down to like Frodo's choice not to kill Gollum, and Gollum's choice, you know, this isn't a Lord of the Rings cast, but I think if I were to sum it up, I would say ASOIAF is like a way bigger take on the role that choice plays, right, in evil. Whereas it's kind of present in Lord of the Rings, but almost feels sometimes like when you're reading the Bible, you know, as we do, and God hardens Pharaoh's heart against the Israelites so that he doesn't let them free, so that God can keep doing plagues to wreck the Egyptians. And it kind of there's some elements of that in Lord of the Rings where like the evil characters feel evil because they are meant to be evil. Whereas in ASOIAF, it's very deliberately exploring like, this person is choosing to do this. Like they are actively choosing to slaughter people at the Red Wedding or whatever.
I also will agree with Jim Jibber that Martin is very much aware of everything he's talking about. He's just not writing those stories.
I think that, not to go back to Tolkien or the Bible per se, but to go back to my own other background as an enormous weeb.
Oh.
yes.
I'm going to talk about the homunculi from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Okay. I'm with you.
The homunculi are created, they're created to look down on humans in very much the same way the others do, though the others, of course, are likely of human origin, so they are people with a capacity for good and evil, etc., right? And the homunculi are very interesting, and some of them come off as perhaps simple, and because of that, have a sense of innocence to them. Or some of them are come off as very complex, or even envying humanity, right? Or even having some almost noble acts. But they ultimately are still evil in what they have done and who they are. So I just see the others like the homunculi.
You know what? That's a fair and honest
Was that
take.
like too out of left field from what you guys were discussing?
Not at all. I'm excited to see what the weebs who listen to the podcast have to say.
Well, one weeb is thinking about it.
FBaby's pretty mainstream.
Oh.
I do know what you mean with the homunculi.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. To make another weeb reference, I would say that what Jim Gibber is talking about is from the early parts of Evangelion, where the angels are just kind of like monsters, and by the end you learn that they actually are not just mindless monsters destroying everything.
Kinda.
Because you get to know one. One of them comes in human form and he talks to Shinji. And there is a thing he wants, and he is evil, but you do understand him by the end, whereas for a lot of what Jim Gibber is talking about, these are like hard to understand and just like totally evil characters that make for interesting stories, and George is more, what is it, the human heart in conflict with itself, rather than the human heart in conflict with how I be remembered in the drinking halls for forever.
But Celia was bad.
Yeah, Celia was bad. And our next post comes from frequent feature writer on Maester Monthly, user Bale Bard, who writes an excellent post titled "No Mercy and No Empty Threats, Kingslayer's Choice in the Winds of Winter." And the basic gist of this post is that while Jamie is going through the Riverlands, he makes a demonstration that he does not make empty threats. He tells, Ryman Frey that if he keeps talking, he'll hit him. And Ryman Frey keeps talking, so he hits him. So it's a demonstration by Martin that Jamie knows, especially from Tywin, that you have to follow through on your threats or else nobody will believe them. And part of his journey through the Riverlands is he takes quite a lot of hostages. In particular, one from House Blackwood, Hoster Blackwood? From Titus Blackwood in particular, he takes his second son, Hoster Blackwood. And the question that Bale Bard is asking is, will Jamie actually follow through, considering the Blackwoods are probably going to rebel against the Lannisters, especially because Jamie took mercy on Titus and did not take his favorite daughter, instead taking the bookish son that he doesn't really want. So what do you think, Eliana?
I'm mixed. I'm like in the middle, because I think that Bale Bard is very much right that this is how we should be reading Jamie's character, and that Jamie, especially given his history, doesn't make empty threats. But I think that on the other hand, if Jamie's character arc is going to eventually be a redemption arc, which we don't know yet, but at the moment it is a humanization arc, to point to a post from a few years ago by user Decalfa, if it is a redemption arc and we are supposed to be seeing a moral growth in Jamie, then him having in the early parts, like the first few chapters literally of a Game of Thrones, been willing to carry out a threat and kill a child, Bran, for him to refuse to do it later, we should see that as growth in his character.
Yeah, that's what I keep coming down. I will agree with this post in that I think that with this post and that I think we'll see this choice for Jamie. But yeah, as to how it plays out, him killing Hoster would be sort of a point of no return, it feels like. I mean, maybe not a point of no return, but I think at that point we would have to accept that it's not a redemption arc. It's just a character arc. Like, we're not getting him morally redeemed. We're just getting more of his story and maybe more growth. But it's whether he's growing into Tywin or into his own person, I think, right? Is that kind of like whether he's growing into this kind of guy who like follows through on all of his threats, even the monstrous things and all that, or is different somehow. I don't know. A lot of it depends on where his endgame will go, which is hard to say.
I think that, they're saying that George could deny him this final step of redemption. I think it isn't, especially if the biggest question that Bale Bard is putting is like, will Jamie find himself in this situation? And of course, later on, it's like, what will he do? I don't think it's insignificant that the characters that he's dealing with are Tytos Blackwood and then his son Hoster. Like, there's definitely something being played with here regarding his family and who he chooses. Because obviously Tytos and Tywin are both part of his legacy in terms of his family, but what will he ultimately choose? I don't know.
It's also interesting in that Baelbard notes that Jaime takes a mercy on Tytos by taking the child that Tytos doesn't like the most, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or the one that he is in least in favor of, leaving him his favorite daughter. But you could also see that as Jaime understanding that he might have to kill this child at some point, and maybe he's more comfortable killing the more full-grown Hoster than killing a little girl. Maybe he's showing internal regrets about what he did to Bran and his general brutality, especially because he keeps telling himself, like, this is what Tywin would do, this is what Tywin would do. So I don't know. It's at least hints at a conscience that we don't normally see from Jaime, I would say.
So one kind of wrinkle in this is, in what context would Jaime be asked to or forced to kill Hoster? Because he's with Brienne right now. He's going to meet Lady Stoneheart, presumably. Hoster, we can assume, is maybe coming with him as his squire. I don't know if he's not his squire though, is he? He's just...
I think he goes to King's Landing, doesn't
he? Hoster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, is it he's forced to kill Hoster to spare him from something, or to stop him from reporting back to his father about, I think, not that there's a good context for killing a child. That's not what I'm saying. Just that I think it would say different things about Jaime's character, depending on that really specific context for what's happening.
I do not know. I think that George has many tricks up his sleeve because, as I always point to, the Shadow Baby could not have been gleaned from anything that we had in a Game of Thrones.
That's a good point.
And there's obviously a setup here for something, but I don't think we have the information at the moment right now, right, to say what that is. And that's the joy of storytelling. Following a story.
I'm going to undercut my own point a little bit and say that earlier in this post, Baelbard notes that Jaime threatened to fire Edmure's child through a trebuchet into a wall. So maybe Jaime is not as morally conflicted as I was saying, but it's possible it's subjective. Maybe he's seeing Myrcella in the girl, as he's also very conflicted during these chapters about being a father.
Yeah, that's true. And there's also an element of, when Tyrion thinks of Hoster, he thinks Tyrion would like this one. They could talk from dawn to dusk arguing about books. Like, he sees his family in little Hoster Blackwood. So, yeah, it's hard. I agree, though, with Baelbard when they say that at the top of the post that Jaime was prepared to carry out the trebuchet threat. I agree with that. I don't think it was a bluff, because we do have, in the same chapter, Jaime going, only a fool makes threats he's not prepared to carry out. I don't think George would put Jaime making a threat and saying that in the same chapter without the intent behind it. And I also think it's important that Jaime faces the choice of whether or not to kill a child again in the story. I think, we have to get that at some point. IMO. Now, maybe he does have to face this choice with Hoster, but, way down the road, and Hoster goes to King's Landing and has adventures and escapes, and they meet up after a book or a book or two before the 8th book. And Jaime is faced with this choice again. I agree with
you. He has to face the choice again. It's inevitable because he, at the moment, has never actually truly reflected or repented for what he has done to Bran. He thought about it once in the first chapter that we have of him in A Storm of Swords, and he's quite angry. He's he's not repentant at all. He's just he was watching us, that little shit. That's not the words he uses, but it's basically the basic idea. So he has to come across it. I think that perhaps we are establishing that at the moment that he would have been willing to carry out that threat against Edmure's baby. But I'm going to throw out there the idea that Jaime and Tyrion's character arcs are going in somewhat opposite directions. They are meant to be seen as foils for one another. And we see initially in the story that Tyrion makes a threat against Tommen. And he thinks, wow, it's a relief that thing happened, because then I would have actually had to carry that threat out, because you, as Baelbard, and you say, a fool does not make threats that they aren't willing to carry out. So perhaps they have Jaime being willing to carry that threat out against Edmure's child, so that he and Tyrion both are at that same baseline, and that we can compare how they both react to similar situations, again, in the future, in different / opposite ways.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a really good connection. Like having Tommen whip through the streets or something, right? I can't remember what the threat was, but it was some
something
bullshit
heinous.
like that. Yeah,
it was not great.
Something truly not good. Yeah, that's good. I don't want to get all self-promoting and esoteric, but on Twitter a little while ago, I was talking about the idea of like the story climaxing with Bran facing something in a tower metaphor, like in the dreamscape. And Matt, you threw out there that Tyrion is kind of a good figure for that, to be in the tower. So it'd be interesting if Tyrion is the figure in the tower who has like gone full Jaime and become super evil, and Jaime has sort of gone the other way and is, I don't know, making a golden hand for a Stark who lost a hand or something, you know, like doing what Tyrion once did for Bran, somehow choosing to help a crippled person instead of flinging someone out of a tower. I don't know. I like that idea, Eliana, of the sort of chasing each other, Jaime and Tyrion, orbiting each other.
Although, interestingly, they are both seen as total assholes in universe by everyone that is not themselves.
It's not untrue.
Jaime, even as he's like thinking in his head, like, I'm gonna be like Arthur Dane, I'm gonna be fair. It's clear everyone around him is thinking, wow, the Kingslayer's a dick at every encounter.
There's one person who doesn't think that. Well, actually, there's
Brienne.
There's kind of a few people who don't think that Tyrion's a huge dick, and that's Sansa and Penny.
Oh, for Tyrion? Yeah. Yeah.
Penny, I think Penny thinks Tyrion's a dick. Tyrion's a huge dick.
I think Penny's very torn. She doesn't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are kind of just assholes, aren't they? Like,
that's being a Lannister, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also thinking about this. I was talking with Aziz from History of Westeros about Criston Cole and
he's
how
a huge dick.
Yeah, well, he's outwardly a huge dick, and that's what we all think about him because that's the way Fire and Blood is written. But if you see Jaime and Criston Cole as similar characters, it's entirely possible that, much in the same way, Jaime was trying to make things right at some point, at least internally. Possible Criston Cole was too, even though histories will remember them as the tremendous assholes that they were outwardly.
I think that's fair. Jaime inwardly is like, I will be Golden Hand the Just. I'm going to do all sorts of good stuff. But he's propping up like a horrifying regime with threats of violence against unborn infants. Like that's not good. Especially if history is written by the singers and Thomas Evans lives to, sing about how Jaime was going to throw babies at the walls of River Run.
True fact. He did threaten to do that.
He did threaten to do that. So, yeah. There's something about how Jaime will be remembered here, which, almost makes me think that if Jaime is faced with the choice whether or not to kill Hoster, he will spare him, but history will remember his choice badly or something. Like it'll be shitty somehow.
Oh yeah, like Hoster could die in an accident and everyone assumes it was for Blackwood.
Yeah, or he spares Hoster, but then Jane Westerling dies on the way back to the crag and everyone blames Jaime for it. Like...
Yeah, he's just going to be a negative sponge for whatever happens in the Winds of Winter and the Riverlands.
Around Jaime, children are at like a net negative. Children are the losing team around Jaime Lannister.
But in Jaime's defense, though, his greatest moment is definitely his saving of King's Landing, a thing nobody will ever remember.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, his king slaying... his
that it was a service, even though everyone thinks him a total D-bag for doing it.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
I mean, it can be both, right?
Yes, it can.
I watched movies.
That's the human heart in conflict.
Well, especially with Jaime's original arc, where he was supposed to be full D-bag, the Golden King that kills his own children to make his way to the throne.
I mean, whatever Jaime chooses, like I said, coming back to those names, it's going to have enormous ramifications, A, for his character, B, potentially for the story, because, like, what if it's like the fate of Hoster is both important for Jaime's soul, But also he's got a name like Hoster, so maybe it's important for the fate of the Riverlands in general somehow.
That's true. Yeah, and he's a scholarly lad as well. I mean, he's got these like archetypes plugged into him from different angles, like little matrix cables. Like he's in one of those pods. He's got like
poor Hoster.
Titos, books like plugged in
Tyrion.
over him. Tyrion.
Poor Hoster. Yep. He's not a real person.
No, he's just an agglomeration of ideas. But then again, isn't that what we all are, Walt Whitman?
Wow,
I
that's
sing
amazing.
the song of myself, and by myself I mean
exactly.
Foster Blackwood.
Jamie's all like, do I contradict myself? Very well.
I love that quote, and I will not apologize.
No, absolutely. I think about it often.
I was just thinking about it actually earlier today when I was walking somewhere. So.
Good. It is still your Twitter bio,
Not
right?
Twitter, Facebook.
I've got one more random thing to say. It's a stupid reference. What if at the end of A Song of Ice and Fire, like Jamie's like Batman at the end of Dark Knight, where he's like, "You need somebody to hunt," or whatever he says.
That was really good. Wow. And once again, it comes back to Heath Ledger as well.
It does. Where somebody good has to do something evil, and Jamie's like, "I'll do it, because I'm Batman."
Very good.
He'll absorb the evil like he does for everything else around him in order to do a good thing.
Right. He's going to slurp that evil right up and just his way out of
there. Jamie
Lannister. Who tells us that, Jamie Lannister is not the hero he deserved, but the one that we need right now or something like that. Or it's the backwards, whatever.
We're going to have to hunt you now.
I think it's Bran who says that.
I can see it.
Commissioner Bran Gordon with his Bran signal.
Commissioner Bran Gordon and Batman, the golden Batman.
Oh, a Went. And he does have Went blood through his mother, Catelyn.
See, calculated.
Brienne's carrying a Went shield as well, so maybe Jamie ends up with the Went shield and he literally is Batman.
Wow.
I mean, I know that it's Went under the colors of Dunk or something, or
yeah.
I don't remember.
It is a Went. It is, yeah. They painted over the Went single with sigil. I'm glad I was able to give you guys that gift of the Dark Knight Jamie.
Dark Knight Jamie.
Oh, the Long Night Jamie.
Oh.
Hey,
hello.
I was also saying that the Long Night's coming, but also that.
Hello.
What the fuck was that?
All right, everyone. So we have a post here by Duran Durandon, and the summary is basically that in A Song of Ice and Fire, of course, we know that Arya in Nymeria kind of brings Catelyn Stark's body to shore, finding her in the river, and then Beric Dondarrion finds that body and resurrects Catelyn as Lady Stoneheart. And Duran Durandon is saying that what if, there's a lot in the story that telegraphs that Arya Stark may die, Lady Stoneheart is the one who resurrects Arya.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the TLDR. It says, cue the circle of life. Which is also getting its own adaptation.
Yeah, the ASOIAF adaptation of it. I mean, so part of this is predicated on the whole, that quote, it's right at the top. You'll be sowing all through winter. When the spring thaw comes, they will find your body with a needle still locked tight between your fingers. And then Jon looks at the camera and winks. He's saying this to Arya. And I think Duran Durandon is taking this as evidence that Arya will die, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's a little line in here that's a little creepy, but what would Uncat do if she happens to find a nice preserved body of one of her kids in the snow? Give him a big old kiss.
I kind of like that one.
It's A Song of Ice and Fire.
Lady Stoneheart is gonna just lean over and plant a big wet one right on Arya's lips and pass the gift of life back to her daughter and undo herself.
It's just CPR, right?
It is kind of like CPR. Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? First of all, I mean, do you think Arya's going to die? That's what this is all predicated on.
I want to come back to CPR for a second.
Okay. Let's come back to CPR for a second.
CPR isn't A Song of Ice and Fire. Aaron Greyjoy is certified.
I just want to quickly say that the line, I was taught to say when you give CPR to babies. I just always thought it was hilarious where you go, baby, are you okay? I'm like, that baby doesn't know language.
You are supposed to ask.
Stupid babies.
I know it's polite.
You have to ask.
I don't know if Arya dies or not.
Well, no shit. I'm asking what. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. That's
I don't know.
Way to
I
engage.
can't deny that there is a lot that like somewhat points to it regarding the evidence that Durandon shows regarding the sowing throughout through winter, and of course Arya says once like, "I hope your princess dies," to what's his face, some Bray boy, and I don't know about how it really plays out. I did participate in this thread a little where in the 1993 letter and the original outline, Catelyn Stark, Arya, and Bran were all supposed to head north and beyond the wall. Somehow, for some reason, and I meet up with like Manson crew. Yep. But as they're escaping the others attacking, the children somehow escape, but Catelyn Stark dies. And it seems like it's telegraphed that Catelyn was always supposed to return as some sort of undead, whether that's as an other or how we have her now as a firebite. And having Catelyn die close to Arya, like physically close, shows that maybe there was always some sort of plan to eventually have them within some sort of geographical proximity of one another. I don't know that Arya dies from an other, but just like in general, like perhaps that was in the cards for George originally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree. It seems like she was always supposed to not only die, but die in a way that's convenient for her to come back. Cat was, yeah. Arya, I kind of think that she might die. I know there's that apocryphal rumor about George and his wife, and she's like, "Don't kill Arya, or I'll divorce you."
Has anyone ever seen a quote of that?
No, and also people have denied it. Like people have come out and I think George himself has been like, "I don't know about that, guys." I'll have to look for that too, but that's more of a joke than people think it's serious. I think it's pretty much just a fun couple joke. And it is telegraphed that Arya could die. I've kind of thought that she might die and end up permanently in Nymeria as the wolf general at the head of Jon's armies. I think I've actually said that before. But I don't know. I guess I could see this. I feel like Lady Stoneheart has to have a bigger purpose in the story somehow. I've always kind of thought there was an outside chance that she could bring Jon back as well. The timing, it really depends on the timing, but I still think there's like, if I was a betting man, I could see Cat bringing someone back, maybe passing it on to someone else. I know that on the
other side of the coin, I think that this was in that essay, Chloe, aka Lizen Arbor, on Twitter or ZombieBait on Reddit, has theorized that Stoneheart's purpose is more of to serve as being killed by Arya, who learns to truly give a mercy kill, right? There's that scene between her and Sandor where Sandor's like, you know where the heart is. He's teaching her how to do a mercy kill. So it seems as though that people are really tying together, either way, Lady Stoneheart and Arya's storylines.
Yeah, I do like the theory that Arya will be the one to kill Lady Stoneheart. I kind of think that's a little more likely, given what we know about the Faceless Men. They're big on death. That would be kind of an interesting tie-in if she does some death. But in kind of a merciful way. If gives the gift of death to her mother, which is really fucked up, but not unlikely.
I don't think this is a theory I'm going to be believing anytime soon. I think like you were saying, the theory that Arya may actually kill Cat is the stronger one. And I've also, like you said, the Raising Jon one, although that was one when I had the show and the books mixed in my head. The story about her praying over Jon and asking the gods to save him, that didn't happen in the books. Right. If that was in the books, it would be a much stronger thing that she eventually would return the favor, like pay back the gods and give up her life to save him in the way that would be much stronger. I don't think that's going to happen in the books. It's not a scene that happens. Right. I've always liked the idea that Cat's life will be used to bring back Robb, because his head and his body are missing.
Oh, Jesus.
And she's been hunting all over the Riverlands. She even got his crown back. It appears she's hunting relics. And, like, Joffrey asked for Robb's head. It never got sent. It's not known what happened to it after it was cut off, or his body after the direwolf was sewn to it.
Mhm.
I've always liked the idea that that might be like a temporary Night's King sort of figure, that he's been dead so long he comes back absolutely messed up and like Stoneheart times 11, and Arya has to kill both of them. But there's nothing really behind it except that. But I do think Arya is definitely on the fast track to death.
She's on the highway to...
Well, by the end of it, I think she will die, but I have a hard time seeing a situation where George has put so much effort into making Arya a perfect assassin and somebody that's extremely hard to catch and kill, that she would end up near Catelyn and also dying in some way. It's like, why are you making a superhero assassin if you're just going to have her not make it to the end in some way? It seems counterproductive as a storytelling tool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Needle and that whole like training arc thing is something he definitely had from the get-go. He mentions Needle in the 1993 letter and her prowess with it, that she and Bran escape with the help of her and her sword Needle. So yeah, he's definitely got some climactic scene in mind for Arya and her prowess. I don't know, she could end up with the Brotherhood without banners though, and I see this as like someone is reading the tea leaves and they are getting one version of events out of this. I see something different in the tea leaves, but we're reading the same kind of patterns are here. That Arya and Cat will intersect, this sort of death and undeath, like all these pieces.
I would say the biggest hint that Arya is definitely going to die by the end of the series is that in a Game of Thrones that she's compared so heavily to Lyanna, and Ned even thinks like, "Oh, you have wolf blood in you, like my siblings, both who died young. Okay, well, so Arya's not going to make it."
Or Nymeria dies and goes into Arya, and that's what it means when she has wolf blood.
The Night Wolf
in her.
I'm Arya.
Woof, 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 woof!
No, that's Jaime.
Yeah.
Actually, that is something I've thought about before, where obviously the theory, I think...
What, Batman Arya?
No, we probably all agree that Robb went into Greywind on his death.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen with Jon. Maybe it goes the other way. Maybe Lady went into Sansa. Maybe Nymeria will go into Arya, that kind of thing.
Sansa frequently wakes up from dreams and is like, "Lady?" And thinks that Lady's there, so...
Yeah, if they have that strong connection, if Dor can go one way, why not the other?
She also chases Styx and has to go outside to use the restroom, and she
Who
barks.
hasn't felt that way at least once in their life?
Yeah, absolutely.
She pees on her territory. Like, the Eyrie is just covered in Sansa
Is the
peeing.
Eyrie not just one giant fire hydrant?
Well, the waterfall.
Excellent point. They don't
Melissa's
call them
tears.
Melissa's tears. Oh, fuck me. We both went for it. We both charged at it. Well, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Maester Monthly. You can find us on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and YouTube. All of our episodes are archived at our WordPress, maestermonthly.wordpress.com. We are on social media at Maester Monthly on Facebook and Twitter, where, according to the ancient prophecies, you simply have no choice but to smash the MF and like button. If you would like to suggest an intro question or a subreddit highlight, feel free to PM us on the subreddit, reddit.com/r/ASOIAF. If you've got the time and the inclination, iTunes reviews always help us out. That is one of the primary ways that people find us. We always read all the YouTube comments and iTunes reviews. Even if we don't throw them out on the airwaves here, we are still reading them. So keep them coming. We love to see you tell us how handsome I am. I have been Michael, also known as Bookshelfstud.
And I have been Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I have been Matt, also known as JoeMagician.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you to everyone on this subreddit for creating such amazing content. And thank you to George Railroad Martin for writing these books.
Reading Railroad.
George Railroad Martin. Bye.